I got home after a 14-hour shift and found my wife's ex-husband in bed with my wife. I stood in the doorway of my own living room, completely frozen. They were on our couch, the same dark blue sectional we'd spent 2 weekends picking out 3 years ago, arguing over fabric samples like it actually mattered. My wife's legs were wrapped around him, and they didn't even notice me at first. I could hear everything, the sounds, the way she said his name. I wanted to throw up. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, my wife, Brenda, turned her head and saw me standing there. She didn't scramble, she didn't scream, she just smiled, like genuinely smiled. "Oh, you're home early," she said casually, like I just walked in on her watching TV. Dustin, her ex-husband, pulled away and smirked at me. "Yeah, man," he said while adjusting his shirt. "We've been meaning to talk to you about this." His voice was so calm, so matter-of-fact, like we were discussing weekend plans. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. My 2 stepdaughters, Amy and Nicole, walked in from the kitchen, both holding wine glasses. Red wine, I noticed. The expensive kind I bought for our anniversary that was still 2 months away. Amy, the older one, at 19, looked at me with this expression of pity mixed with annoyance. "Dad," she said, and I hated how she called me that in this moment. "You need to accept the new reality. Uncle Dustin is moving in. He's been helping Mom out a lot, and honestly, he's twice the man you'll ever be." Nicole nodded in agreement. "We all talked about it," she added like I was the outsider in my own family meeting. "It's better this way." I felt my chest tighten. My hands started shaking, but I kept my face completely blank. "How long?" I asked quietly. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "How long has this been going on?" My wife, Brenda, sat up and pulled a blanket over herself, finally showing some modesty. She shrugged like we were discussing what to have for dinner. 6 months, she said. Maybe longer. Dustin and I reconnected at Nicole's graduation party. We wanted to wait to tell you until you were ready to hear it. He's been helping with bills, too, since you're always at work. Dustin stretched out on my couch, looking comfortable. "Your mortgage is brutal, man," he said. No judgment. Brenda needed support. I nodded slowly, processing every word. Then I walked past all of them down the hallway to our bedroom, the bedroom where I'd slept alone most nights for the past year, while she claimed she needed space. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and opened my banking app. See, I'd been suspicious for about 8 weeks. Those late-night texts where she'd flip her phone face down when I walked in. The new lingerie I found in her drawer that she'd never worn for me. The way she started going to the gym 5 times a week, but never lost a pound. So, 2 months ago, I'd quietly moved $47,000 from our joint savings account into one only I could access. Our entire life savings that I'd been building since before we even met. I also called my lawyer that same week, a guy named Albert, who'd handled my first divorce years ago. We drafted papers, documented everything. I had him dig into our finances too. And that's when I found out about Brenda's little secret. $23,000 in credit card debt spread across 4 cards I never knew existed. Shopping sprees, spa days, expensive dinners, all while I worked doubles to keep us afloat. I walked back to the living room where all 4 of them were waiting. They looked at me expectantly, like I was supposed to give some big speech. Instead, I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket and handed it to Dustin. "Congratulations," I said, my voice flat. "You can have her and all the debt she's been hiding. $23,000 in credit cards I just found out about yesterday. The bills are in her name, but I'm sure she'll tell you you're supposed to help with those too." Brenda's face went completely white. She sat down heavily. "You don't understand. Dustin and I have history, a real connection." I pulled out my phone, opened her messages to her best friend. "Listen, Dustin's not as smart as my husband, but at least he thinks I'm perfect." Dustin grabbed the phone, scrolling fast. Brenda tried to snatch it. "That's private." Dozens of messages, her ranking us, comparing us. "You told him you loved him," Dustin said quietly. Brenda started crying. "You are. He's just the stable one." She was scrambling. "I need both." Dustin read one more out loud. "Once I get half his money, I'm done with Dustin too." Brenda lunged for the phone, knocking it from his hands, and it slid across the floor, still open to a group chat called The Rotation, with 6 other men's names. Dustin bent down and picked up the phone before Brenda could reach it. His hands were actually shaking as he scrolled through the messages, and I just watched his face change with every swipe. Confused, then hurt, then this look of complete rage that honestly made me think he might throw the phone through the window. He stopped on one conversation and stared at it for what felt like a full minute. The room was dead silent except for the sound of his thumb swiping up, reading more and more. "You told Greg the exact same thing you told me," Dustin said, his voice getting louder with each word. "Like word for word. You make me feel alive again. My husband doesn't understand me. I've never connected with anyone like this. He kept scrolling, and I could see his jaw clenching harder. Ryan got the same lines. So did Kyle, and Aaron, and Jeff, and some kid named Trevor. He looked up at Brenda, and man, if looks could kill. Which one did you actually mean it with? Brenda just stood there with her mouth hanging open, looking between Dustin and me like one of us was supposed to save her from this situation. Neither of us moved. Answer me! Dustin's voice cracked on the last word, and honestly, it was the first time he'd shown any real emotion since I walked in. She still didn't answer, just kept opening and closing her mouth like a fish. I pulled out my own phone and started forwarding screenshots to every single contact in that rotation group chat. Took me maybe 30 seconds to send everything. I included my address in the message. She's been lying to all of us. Here's proof. Come see for yourself. My phone started buzzing immediately, like constantly. I had to put it on silent because the notifications wouldn't stop. Greg's response came through first. I'm 2 doors down. I'll be there in 1 minute. Then Ryan. Are you serious? Kyle responded next. She told me her husband died. Aaron wrote, on my way right now. Jeff just sent a long string of curse words that would make a sailor blush. Trevor's message was simple. I'm coming over. Brenda's face went from white to bright red in about 2 seconds. What did you just do? She screamed it so loud that Amy actually flinched on the stairs. I invited your boyfriends over, I said, keeping my voice completely level. Figured they all deserved to know the truth. You know, transparency and all that. You can't do that! She tried to grab my phone out of my hand, but I just stepped back out of her reach. Amy started laughing from her spot on the stairs. Oh my God, this is gonna be so good. Nicole, go make popcorn. Nicole looked absolutely terrified. Mom, what's happening? What rotation? What boyfriends? Before anyone could answer her, the front door just swung open. Greg walked straight in without even knocking, still wearing these dirty jeans and a stained t-shirt from doing yard work. He lived 2 houses down, and apparently he had a key to my house that I definitely didn't know about. When he saw Brenda standing there in just her robe, his whole body went stiff. Is it true? Greg demanded, walking right up to her. Have you been sleeping with other men this whole time while telling me we were exclusive? Brenda opened her mouth to respond, but Greg wasn't having it. Don't you dare lie to me right now, he said, pulling out his phone. I've got the screenshots. You told me I was the only one who truly saw you, that I understood you in ways your husband never could. He held up his phone to show texts between them. You said your marriage was basically dead and you were just waiting for the right time to leave him. Dustin was still holding my phone and he turned the screen toward Greg. You're number 4 on the rotation list, Dustin said quietly, right between Aaron and Jeff. Greg's face turned this deep shade of red I didn't even know was possible. He looked like he was about to punch a wall. The next 20 minutes were absolutely chaotic. Ryan showed up next. This super muscular guy in gym clothes that I recognized from Brenda's Instagram photos she'd always said were her trainer. Then came Kyle, an older guy maybe in his 50s wearing a full business suit like he'd just left the office. He looked absolutely devastated, like someone had just told him his dog died. Aaron came in after that looking furious, followed by Jeff who kept shaking his head and muttering, I can't believe this, over and over. The last one through the door was Trevor, this young kid who honestly couldn't have been older than 23, maybe 24 tops. They all crowded into my living room, and the noise level was insane. Everyone talking over each other, demanding answers, comparing the lies Brenda had told them. Dustin had moved to the corner of the room near the TV stand, just watching everything unfold with this completely blank expression on his face like he'd mentally checked out. You told me you were a widow, Kyle said to Brenda, and his voice was actually shaking. You said your husband died in a car accident 2 years ago. I went to a grief support group with you. A grief support group, Brenda? Wait, what? Aaron interrupted. She told me she was divorced and lonely, that her ex-husband, he pointed at me, was abusive and controlling. She said you were basically a restraining order waiting to happen. Trevor stepped forward, looking even younger up close. Hold on, you're not her abusive ex? She told me you hit her, that you'd put her in the hospital twice. That's the whole reason I was helping her save up money to leave. The entire room went dead silent. Everyone turned to look at me at the same time. I just shrugged. Never laid a hand on her, I said simply. But I did work about 70 hours a week to pay for this house and everything in it. That part's completely true. Brenda tried to say something, but Ryan talked right over her, his voice cutting through the room. Okay, real talk. How much money did everyone give her? Because I'm out $3,000 for her daughter's supposed medical bills. That question changed the whole energy in the room. The anger turned into this sick realization that they'd all been scammed. Greg spoke up first, rubbing his face with both hands. I paid her car payment for 4 months straight. $1,800 total. Kyle's voice was barely above a whisper. I paid for a vacation we took together last summer. Told my own kids I was going on a business trip. $4,500 for the resort, flights, Everything. Aaron looked like he might actually throw up. Rent money. She said her landlord was threatening to evict her. I sent her money multiple times over 6 months. Maybe $6,000 total. I'd have to check my bank statements. Jeff, the quiet one who'd been shaking his head this whole time, finally spoke. I'm her personal trainer. Or I was, I guess. I paid for her gym membership and all her sessions. Basically gave her free training for 6 months. That's like $2,200 worth of services. Trevor was the last one to answer, and he looked absolutely crushed. I bought her a laptop for school. She said she was going back to college to finish her degree and couldn't afford one. $1,300, and I'm pretty sure she sold it because I never saw her use it. I did the quick math in my head while they were all processing what they'd just admitted. Over $19,000, and that wasn't even counting whatever Dustin had probably been contributing or any cash transactions they might not have mentioned. I looked over at Dustin, still standing in his corner, and he wouldn't make eye contact with anyone. That's when Brenda completely broke down, started crying, like full-on ugly sobbing with her hands covering her face. I was so lonely, she said between sobs, her voice all high-pitched and desperate. He's never home. He works constantly and never pays any attention to me. I needed someone to actually care about me, to make me feel wanted. I watched Trevor's whole expression change. His face softened immediately, and he actually started moving toward her like he was going to comfort her. Ryan saw it happening and grabbed the kid's arm hard, pulling him back. Don't fall for it again, man, Ryan said firmly. That's exactly what she does. That's exactly what she wants you to do. Trevor looked torn, standing there between Ryan and Brenda, probably trying to decide if he should listen to his feelings or his common sense. Dustin finally spoke up from his corner. His voice was so quiet that everyone had to stop talking to actually hear him. How much of what you told me was real, Brenda? Brenda wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her robe and looked right at him. Everything with you was real, baby. I swear. Every single word I said to you, I meant it. I actually almost laughed at that. Instead, I asked Dustin the question that had been bugging me since this whole mess started. When did you two really reconnect? Was it actually 6 months ago, like she said earlier? Dustin hesitated. The pause went on way too long, and I knew right then he was trying to decide whether to keep lying or finally tell the truth. That's when Amy's laugh cut through the tension like a knife. She was still sitting on the stairs, and she'd been watching this whole thing unfold like it was her favorite reality show. Try 2 years ago, she said, standing up and walking down the stairs slowly. Everyone in the room turned to stare at her. Brenda's face went completely pale, like all the blood just drained out. What are you talking about, Amy? Dustin asked, but there was zero conviction in his voice. He knew he'd been caught. You've been living in our basement since I was 17 years old, Amy said, reaching the bottom of the stairs. You two were never actually apart. You just pretended to be for him. She pointed at me. The room absolutely erupted. Everyone started yelling at once, demanding explanations, asking questions, calling Brenda and Dustin every name you could imagine. I walked past all of them to the basement door in the hallway. I'd walked past this door literally thousands of times and never thought twice about it. Brenda always said it was just storage for old furniture and Christmas decorations, and she kept it locked. Said she'd lost the key years ago. I didn't care about keys anymore. I put my shoulder into the door and the cheap lock broke on the second hit. The door swung open hard, slamming against the wall, revealing stairs leading down into darkness. I found the light switch and flipped it on. What I saw down there made my stomach drop. It wasn't storage. It was a fully furnished bedroom. Like a real bedroom. There was a proper queen-size bed with a headboard, not some futon or air mattress. A dresser with Dustin's clothes literally hanging out of the half-open drawers. Photos on the wall in actual frames of Dustin and Brenda together. And these weren't old photos. These were recent. Some of them looked like they were from a beach vacation. Brenda in a bikini I'd never seen. Both of them tanned and smiling. There was a small desk in the corner with mail stacked on it. I walked over and picked up the envelopes, checking the addresses. All of them were addressed to Dustin at this address. My address. I started checking the dates on the postmarks. The oldest envelope I found was from 26 months ago. 26 months. Over 2 years. I just stood there for a minute, holding this stack of mail, trying to process what I was looking at. 2 full years. He'd been living in my house, in my basement, for 2 years. All those nights I worked late shifts. All those double shifts on weekends to make extra money for the mortgage and bills. He was down here the whole time. Probably having dinner with my wife while I was at work. Probably sleeping in this bed with her after I'd leave for my overnight shifts. I heard footsteps on the basement stairs behind me. Greg and Ryan had followed me down, and when they saw the room, their faces said everything. Greg actually whistled low, Holy hell, man. You've been paying for his entire life this whole time. I started gathering evidence. There was more on the desk. Utility bills with both my name and Dustin's name on them, showing the payments split right down the middle. A second set of house keys on a hook by the bed. More vacation photos from trips I definitely hadn't taken, and I checked the dates written on the backs. 8 months ago, 10 months ago, 14 months ago. All times when I'd been working overtime, and Brenda had said she was visiting her sister or going on girls' trips. There were receipts, too, stuffed in one of the desk drawers, fancy restaurants I'd never been to, concert tickets, a receipt from a jewelry store for a necklace I'd never seen Brenda wear. Every single one dated within the past 2 years. I carried all of it back upstairs. My arms were full of photos, bills, receipts, keys. The rotation men had formed this semicircle around Brenda and Dustin, who were standing together near the couch looking like cornered animals. When I walked back into the living room holding all this evidence, everyone went completely quiet. I started dropping things on the coffee table one by one. These photos are from 8 months ago. You two on vacation in the Bahamas, apparently. Drop. Utility bills showing payments split between us. He's been paying half this whole time. Drop. Restaurant receipts from places I've never been. Drop. Concert tickets. Drop. Jewelry store receipt. Drop. The house keys made a clinking sound when they hit the table last. Second set of keys. For the man who supposedly moved out years ago and just came back 6 months ago. Brenda and Dustin just looked at each other. Neither of them tried to explain anything or deny it. They both knew there was no point. Kyle picked up one of the utility bills and studied it carefully, adjusting his glasses. "You've been running a con," he said. Not even a question, just stating a fact. "This whole thing has been a scam from the beginning." I kept going because honestly, at this point, what did holding back accomplish? 2 years, I said, looking directly at Brenda. "He's been in that basement for 2 full years. You want to know what I think happened? I think they never actually got divorced. Or if they did, it was all part of the plan. I think this whole thing was set up from the very start." "That's not true," Brenda started, but her voice had absolutely no strength behind it. She sounded defeated. "Then tell me what is true," I said. "Because right now, from where I'm standing, it looks like you needed someone with good credit to buy a house. And Dustin here," I gestured toward him, "probably couldn't qualify for a loan to save his life. Bad credit, right? Maybe some bankruptcies in his past?" Dustin's jaw clenched tight, but he didn't argue the point. That told me everything. Trevor looked completely lost. "I don't understand. Why would they go through all this trouble? Why not just, I don't know, get jobs and buy a house normally?" "Money," Ryan said flatly, crossing his arms. "It's always about money. Always." That's when Brenda finally broke. Maybe it was having 7 angry men staring at her, waiting for answers. Maybe she was just exhausted from keeping up the lies for so long. Maybe she figured there was no point in hiding it anymore since everything was already out in the open. Whatever the reason, she just started talking. "Fine," she said, and her voice was sharp now, all the fake sweetness completely gone. "You want the truth? Here's the truth. Dustin and I never stopped being together. We got divorced on paper because he completely destroyed his credit. We're talking repossessed cars, defaulted loans, bankruptcies, the whole mess. We couldn't buy anything together. Not a house, not a car, nothing." She looked directly at me when she continued, and there wasn't even a hint of guilt in her eyes. "I needed someone stable, someone with a decent job and good credit who could actually qualify for a mortgage. Someone who'd be easy to manipulate and wouldn't ask too many questions." "That was you," she said, like she was explaining something obvious to a child. "The plan was actually pretty simple. I'd marry you, we'd buy a house together using your credit and income, then we'd wait for your credit and work history to improve the property value. Once we had enough equity built up, we'd refinance the house in just my name. Once that went through, we were going to divorce you and push you out. You'd be gone, and we'd have the house free and clear." Greg's voice cut in, sounding disgusted. "And the rotation? Where did we fit into this whole plan?" Brenda shrugged like it should have been obvious. "Extra income while we waited. Do you have any idea how long it takes to build up enough equity in a house to refinance? We're talking years. We needed money for other stuff in the meantime. Vacations, shopping, going out, living our lives. You all had money, and you were all lonely and desperate for attention. Honestly, you were all pretty easy to manipulate once I figured out what you wanted to hear." The silence in the room was heavy. All the rotation men just looked absolutely gutted. Trevor actually sat down on the arm of the couch like his legs wouldn't hold him up anymore. "Did you feel anything real for any of us?" Greg asked, and his voice was quiet and sad. "Anything at all?" Brenda looked at all of them and didn't say a word. That silence answered the question better than anything she could have said. "What about the story about your sick daughter?" Trevor asked, his voice breaking. "Amy just said she's never been sick. Was that all made up too?" Amy answered before Brenda could open her mouth. "I've literally never been sick a day in my life. Perfect attendance all through school. She used my name to manipulate all of you." She pulled out her phone and held it up for everyone to see. "I figured out what they were doing like 3 months ago. I was coming home late one night and heard them arguing in the basement. Heard Mom yelling at Dustin about taking too long with the mark." She looked at me. "That's you, by the way. You're the mark." The target, the sucker. Nicole started crying from the kitchen doorway where she'd been standing this whole time. "I didn't know any of this," she said through tears. "Mom, I swear I didn't know. I thought you and Dustin really did just reconnect. I thought this was real." Amy scrolled through her phone, completely ignoring her sister. "I've been documenting everything since I figured it out. Screenshots of their text conversations, voice recordings of them talking about the plan, photos of Dustin living in the basement. I was going to wait until I turned 18 and could move out safely before doing anything with it, but I guess now works too." She turned her phone toward the room, showing a text conversation. "This one's from literally yesterday. Mom and Dustin discussing what to do when he," she pointed at me, "finally signs the refinance papers. They were planning to file for divorce the next day." I didn't even need to read the texts. Everything was right there on Brenda's face. The way she couldn't meet anyone's eyes, the way her hands were shaking. That's when Ryan completely lost it. He turned and put his fist straight through my living room wall. The drywall just crumpled inward, leaving a hole about the size of a dinner plate. When he pulled his hand back out, his knuckles were bleeding and there was white dust all over his arm. He shook his hand out, leaving drops of blood on my carpet. "I actually cared about you," Ryan said to Brenda, and I'd never heard someone sound so angry and hurt at the same time. "I thought what we had was real. I was planning to leave my wife for you." Nobody said anything for a long moment. The rotation men just stood there, processing the reality that they'd all been used, that none of it had been real, that they'd all been marks just like me. Dustin was staring at the floor like he wished it would open up and swallow him. Brenda had stopped crying and just looked empty, like a robot that had been shut off. I broke the silence. "Everyone needs to leave now. Just go home." "What about our money?" Aaron asked. "Are we supposed to just let her get away with this?" "There's no money to get back," I said flatly. "She's $23,000 in debt from credit cards I didn't even know existed. You think she's got your money sitting in a savings account somewhere? It's gone. Spent. There's no justice coming here. Just wasted time and broken trust. Go home to your families." They started filing out one by one, and the anger in the room slowly drained away into just sadness and exhaustion. Kyle stopped at the front door and turned back to look at Brenda one more time. "I actually loved you," he said quietly. "I know that probably doesn't mean anything to you, but I need you to know that what I felt was real." Brenda didn't respond, didn't even look at him. Kyle shook his head sadly and left. Greg walked out without saying another word. His shoulders slumped. Ryan left the hole in my wall as a parting gift, cradling his bleeding hand. Aaron and Jeff both just looked disgusted as they left, not even glancing back. Trevor was the last one out, and he paused at the door like he wanted to say something meaningful or dramatic, but in the end he just shook his head and walked away. The house felt absolutely massive with just the 5 of us left. Me, Brenda, Dustin, Amy, and Nicole. The silence was oppressive. Amy walked over to where Nicole was still standing in the kitchen doorway and pulled her sister up by the arm. "Come on, we're leaving." "Where are we going?" Nicole asked, wiping her eyes. "To stay with Aunt Christine," Amy said firmly. "I already texted her. She said we can stay as long as we need to. I can't be in this house anymore. I can't watch these two," she gestured at Brenda and Dustin, "and pretend everything's normal." "Amy, wait," Brenda started, standing up from the couch, but Amy cut her off immediately. "No, I'm done. You used everyone in this room. You used him," she pointed at me, "for his money and his credit. You used all those guys out there for cash. You used me and Nicole as props for your scam. You told people I was sick to steal their money. You deserve each other, and honestly, I hope you're miserable together." She looked at me, and her expression softened just a tiny bit. "I'm sorry you got caught up in this. You didn't deserve it. You actually worked hard and tried to take care of us, and they just used you." Nicole came over and hugged me before they left. She whispered, "I'm really sorry," against my shoulder, and I could feel her tears soaking into my work shirt. Then both girls went upstairs to pack their stuff. I could hear them moving around up there, drawers opening and closing, the sound of suitcases being dragged out of closets and zipped shut. They came back down about 45 minutes later, each carrying a suitcase and a backpack. Amy had her laptop bag over her shoulder. They walked right past Brenda and Dustin without saying goodbye and went out the front door. I watched through the window as they loaded everything into Amy's car and drove away. The house got even quieter after that. Just me, Brenda, and Dustin in this big living room that suddenly felt way too small. I looked at them sitting together on that couch, the same spot where I'd found them tangled up together when I first got home. They weren't touching now, weren't even looking at each other, just sitting there like two strangers who happened to be waiting at the same bus stop. "The house is in foreclosure," I said. Both of their heads snapped up at the exact same time, staring at me. "What?" Brenda's voice came out as barely a whisper. "What did you just say?" "The house is in foreclosure," I repeated slowly. "You stopped making the mortgage payments 3 months ago. I just found out last week when the bank finally tracked me down. They sent the foreclosure notice to my work email instead of the house. We're $8,000 behind right now, and they're starting legal proceedings to take the property. I pulled the folded foreclosure notice from my back pocket, where I'd been carrying it around for the past week trying to figure out what to do about it. I tossed it onto the coffee table between all the photos and bills and keys and other evidence of their lies. Dustin grabbed the notice and read it, his hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. "This can't be right. You're lying. This has to be fake. Call the bank yourself if you don't believe me," I said, pointing to the letterhead. "Number's right there at the top. They're open until 6. Brenda snatched the paper out of Dustin's hands and started reading it frantically, her eyes moving faster and faster across the page. No, this wasn't supposed to happen. This ruins everything. We were so close. Just another 2 months and the refinance would have gone through." "Can't refinance a house that's in foreclosure," I said simply. "Bank won't touch it. Guess you should have kept up with the payments instead of spending all my money on beach vacations and expensive restaurants." Dustin stood up fast, the sudden movement making Brenda drop the notice. "This is your fault," he said, pointing at me. "You were supposed to be handling the mortgage. That was supposed to be your job. That was the whole point." "I wasn't part of your plan," I reminded him calmly. "Remember? I was the mark, the sucker, the target. You can't get mad at the mark for not following the con properly." That's when they really started going at it. Brenda jumped up and got right in Dustin's face, screaming about how he was supposed to be watching the finances, how he promised he'd make sure the payments were going through. Dustin yelled back that she was the one who wanted to live like they were rich, taking vacations every few months and buying expensive clothes and going out to fancy dinners 3 times a week. The blame just kept flying back and forth between them. Her fault, his fault, no, your fault, no, yours. They'd completely forgotten I was even standing there. Something crashed behind me, and I turned to see that Brenda had thrown one of her wine glasses at the wall. Red wine was dripping down the paint and the glass had shattered all over the floor. I walked to the front door and grabbed my truck keys from the hook where I always kept them. My truck was still parked in the driveway where I'd left it when I got home from my shift. That shift felt like it had happened 3 days ago instead of just a few hours. Behind me, Brenda and Dustin were still screaming at each other. Another crash, maybe a lamp this time. I didn't bother turning around to check. I opened the front door and stepped out into the cool evening air. It was getting dark now, the streetlights just starting to come on. Greg's house 2 doors down had all the lights on. I wondered if he was in there, probably having a drink, trying to process everything that just happened. I got in my truck and started the engine. Through the living room window, I could see Brenda and Dustin still yelling, their shadows moving around frantically. Dustin threw his hands up in the air. Brenda pointed at him accusingly. I put the truck in reverse and backed out of the driveway. As I shifted into drive, I took one last look at the house. The house I'd worked 70-hour weeks to afford. The house I'd been so proud to buy. The house where I thought I was building a life and a family. Brenda appeared in the doorway, screaming something I couldn't hear through the closed windows. Dustin was right behind her, also yelling, pointing at me as I drove away. I never looked back.